I never thought it would end like this. You're not family anymore, my daughter whispered, as if it were a simple statement of fact. I heard those words at dinner that night, and my heart dropped into my stomach. I had been sitting quietly, just another night with the family, or so I thought. What I didn't expect was to hear Hannah say those words. Right across the table. She thought I didn't hear her. But I did. I wish I could say I reacted immediately, but I didn't. Instead, I smiled, nodded, and went on like nothing had happened. I thought I had prepared myself for just about anything. After all, as a mother, you learn to take the punches. But that moment, those words, felt like a punch to the chest. It wasn't the first time I'd felt distant from Hannah, but this was different. This wasn't just a casual brush-off or an offhand remark. This was betrayal. I could see it in her eyes, in the way she said it, like she was speaking to someone who no longer mattered. Like I was just another stranger in the room, an afterthought. I had been a mother for years, had given everything to my family, and now, sitting there in my own home, I was nothing more than an outsider. The silence after she said it felt deafening. My son Daniel didn't notice, or if he did, he chose not to react. He continued eating, unaware of the deep hurt that was quietly shredding my insides. I wanted to confront Hannah. I wanted to scream, to ask her what she meant. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there, my hands trembling slightly as I tried to keep up the illusion that everything was fine. How had it come to this? Just a few years ago, everything seemed so perfect. We were a family. We had our issues, of course, but what family doesn't? But tonight was different. Tonight, everything felt broken. I finished my meal in silence, the taste of the food completely lost on me. I could barely even taste the wine in my glass, the sharp sting of reality lingering much longer than any flavor could. My mind raced. Where had things gone wrong? Was it me? Had I missed something? Was I too blinded by love, too blinded by the belief that I was still part of something that mattered? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I had ignored the signs for too long. The little moments where Hannah seemed to pull away. The subtle coldness in her tone when she spoke to me. The way Daniel defended her no matter what. I had made excuses for their behavior, telling myself it was just a phase, just growing pains. But deep down I knew better. I had been living in denial. It wasn't just that Hannah had whispered those words. It was everything leading up to it. I had been the one to raise her, to support her, to watch her grow into the woman she was. And now I was nothing more than a stranger. But I wasn't going to let this moment break me. No, not this time. I had been through too much to let it all slip away because of a whisper at dinner. I wasn't just going to sit there and let them push me out of their lives. I was stronger than that. I had to be. As I sat there trying to compose myself, I realized one thing. I wasn't going to let this betrayal define me. I had my pride, and I would not allow them to take it away from me. I knew what I had to do. I just needed to wait for the right moment. The next few days passed in a blur. I barely spoke to Hannah. I avoided the topic altogether, pretending everything was fine while my mind worked through every single detail of that night. I couldn't shake the image of her sitting across from me, the venom in her voice. But something inside me told me not to act hastily. I had learned the hard way that reacting in anger never solved anything. No, this time I would play it smarter. I would wait. Hannah didn't know it yet, but she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. I would expose her betrayal, but not yet. I needed to wait for the perfect moment. And when it came, she wouldn't even see it coming. The family had no idea what was coming. I would reclaim my power, and this time I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I spent the next few days in a haze, the words, "You're not family anymore," echoing through my mind like a constant drumbeat I couldn't escape. At night, as I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling, lost in the darkness. My mind was flooded with memories, images of a time when things had been different. I remembered the day Hannah was born. I had held her in my arms, feeling this overwhelming love for the little life I had brought into this world. How could that same little girl, now a grown woman, look at me and say something so cruel? It was like a dream that had slowly turned into a nightmare. I thought back to all the sacrifices I had made for her, the hours spent helping her with homework, the sleepless nights when she was sick, the countless birthdays, holidays, and moments of joy I had given her. And now, in one simple sentence, she had wiped it all away. My heart ached, but more than that, I felt a deep sense of betrayal. How could she be so cold? The woman I had loved as a daughter seemed like a stranger to me now. The next few days passed in silence. I kept my distance from Hannah, pretending everything was normal. But inside I was seething. I couldn't let it go, not this time. I had spent my life giving to others, always putting my family first. But now I realized that all those years of love had been taken for granted. I wasn't going to let Hannah, or anyone, take me for granted any longer. I started to think about what I could do. What was my next move? I could confront her, yell at her, tell her how much she had hurt me. But I knew that wouldn't do anything. It would just give her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. No, I had to be smarter than that. I had to take control of the situation. I started making a plan, but I didn't let anyone know what was going on in my mind. I was calm, cool, and collected on the outside, but inside I was working through my next steps. I wasn't going to let my family destroy me. I wasn't going to be the victim anymore. I was stronger than that. One evening, a week after the dinner, Daniel called me. He asked how I was doing, and I could hear the hesitation in his voice. I knew he was walking on eggshells, unsure of how to approach me. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him that I knew what had been happening, that I knew how his wife had been treating me. But instead I simply said, "I'm fine, Daniel. Just been keeping busy." He sighed with relief, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. He had always been a mama's boy, always seeking approval, always wanting to make everyone happy. But he didn't realize that by allowing Hannah to treat me this way, he was just as guilty as she was. I knew I had to confront Hannah, but I wasn't ready to do it yet. I needed to gather more information, more evidence to show her exactly who she was dealing with. I couldn't let her think I was weak. I had learned a long time ago that strength wasn't about shouting, wasn't about making a scene. Strength was about patience, about knowing when to strike. I watched them both closely, noticing the little things. The way Hannah would talk about me when she thought I wasn't listening. The way Daniel would try to smooth things over, making excuses for her behavior. I couldn't help but feel disgusted by the way they had been treating me. They thought they could get away with it. They thought I wouldn't stand up for myself. But they were wrong. One afternoon, I had a conversation with my old friend Claire. She had been a part of my life for years, and I trusted her more than anyone. She was the one person who knew everything, the one person I could confide in without judgment. As I poured us both coffee, I told her what had been happening. I explained the situation with Hannah and how I had overheard her cruel words at dinner. Claire's face softened with sympathy, but there was something else in her eyes. Something like recognition, as if she knew this was only the beginning of something bigger. "Barbara," she said softly, "you've always been the strong one. But sometimes even the strongest people need to step back and let the world see the truth." Her words hit me like a wave crashing over me. I realized she was right. I had spent so many years trying to keep everything together, trying to protect my family, that I had neglected myself. I had allowed myself to be overlooked, to be treated as if I didn't matter. But no more. I had earned my place. I had worked hard for the love I had given, and now it was time to take back what was mine. That night, I sat down at my kitchen table, pen in hand, and wrote a letter. It wasn't just any letter. It was a letter that would change everything. In it, I told Hannah everything I had been holding inside. I told her how much I loved her, but how hurt I was by her actions. I reminded her of everything I had done for her, and how I had been there for her every step of the way. And then I told her that I wouldn't be a doormat anymore. I wasn't asking for her love or her approval. I was demanding respect. I sealed the letter and placed it on the counter, knowing it was time for her to read the truth. I didn't know what would happen next, but I was ready for whatever came my way. I had finally found my strength again, and this time I wasn't backing down. I knew that writing the letter wasn't enough. The words had been spilled onto paper, but now they needed to be spoken. I needed to see Hannah's reaction, to know that she understood the weight of what I had said. I had prepared myself for anything. Anger, tears, apologies. But what I got when I handed her the letter was something I didn't expect. Silence. Hannah sat there in the living room, the letter in her hands, her eyes scanning the words I had written. Her face was unreadable, and for a moment, it felt like time itself had stopped. I watched her, waiting for some sort of response. The silence stretched on, heavy and thick, filling the space between us. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she looked up from the letter. Her expression was cold, almost indifferent. "I don't know why you're making such a big deal out of this," she said, her voice flat and emotionless. "You've always been dramatic. Just like always." I felt my stomach drop at her words, but I didn't flinch. I didn't let her see how deeply those words cut me. She didn't understand. She couldn't. To her it was all just an inconvenience, another problem she had to deal with. But to me this was everything. This was the culmination of years of sacrifice, love, and devotion. And now it meant nothing to her. I had hoped that by writing the letter, I could force some kind of realization in her, a moment where she would see the truth. But instead, I was met with her dismissive attitude, as if nothing I had done mattered. As if I didn't matter. I wanted to scream, to shake her and make her see what she had done, what she was doing to me. But I didn't. I stayed calm. I had made a promise to myself that I would be strong, that I would not let her or anyone else make me feel small. "You don't get it, do you?" I said quietly, my voice steady. "This isn't just about you or me. It's about respect. It's about the years I've spent giving everything to this family. And all I'm asking for is a little bit of that respect in return." Her eyes flickered for a moment, but then she shrugged, her indifference returning. "You're just upset. It's not a big deal. I never asked for this." The word stung more than I expected. She had never asked for it. She had never asked for my love, my attention, my sacrifices. And yet here she was acting like I owed her something. I realized then that there was no point in trying to get through to her. She wasn't going to understand. She had already made up her mind, and no matter what I said, she would never see things the way I did. But that was okay. I didn't need her approval anymore. I didn't need anyone's approval. I had spent my life trying to please others, trying to make everyone happy. And where had it gotten me? Betrayed, dismissed, and disregarded. No more. I stood up, my back straight, my chin lifted. "I've done enough," I said, my voice firm. "I've given enough. And now it's time for me to take care of myself." Hannah didn't respond. She didn't have to. Her silence spoke volumes. As I walked away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't about her anymore. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about me. It was about taking back control of my life. I didn't know what the future would hold, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let anyone treat me like I didn't matter again. I had spent too many years sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of others. It was time for me to finally live for myself. I didn't know where this journey would take me, but I was ready for it. I had faced the betrayal, I had confronted it, and now I was ready to move forward. I had taken the first step, and it felt good. Felt like I was finally free. I spent the next few days quietly reflecting on everything that had happened. The confrontation with Hannah, her indifference, the empty words that had come from my own daughter, left me feeling more distant than ever. I had done the right thing, I reminded myself. I had stood up for myself, I had drawn the line. And yet I still couldn't shake the feeling that something important was slipping away. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, felt cold now. Every creak of the floorboards, every ticking of the clock, reminded me of the silence that had settled in our lives. It had always been this way, years of quiet sacrifices, years of unspoken pain. And now it was like the dam had finally broken. It was hard to admit, but I realized just how much I had ignored over the years. The signs were all there. The way Hannah had slowly distanced herself from me, the way Daniel had started siding with her more and more, as if she had somehow replaced me in his life. I hadn't seen it then, but now in the stillness of the house, it was impossible to ignore. I could have confronted them sooner, I thought. I could have spoken up when the little things started to add up. But I had been too afraid, too caught up in the role I had always played, the supportive mother, the patient wife. The one who put everyone else first, even when it meant sacrificing my own happiness. I had convinced myself that I was just being a good mother, a good wife, a good person. But at what cost? At the cost of my own well-being? At the cost of my own voice? Thought back to all the years I had spent trying to make everyone happy. The birthdays, the holidays, the sleepless nights when they needed me. I had done everything for them. But in the end, all that effort had been met with nothing but indifference. The thought was hard to swallow. I had given so much and now it felt like it had all been for nothing. The bitterness began to creep in, but I forced myself to push it away. I couldn't let anger control me, not anymore. It wasn't about them. It was about me. For so long I had been living for everyone else, bending over backward to please them, to make them feel loved and cared for. But in the process I had lost myself. I had let them take everything from me, and I had allowed it to happen because I thought that was what a good mother did. But I had been wrong. I had to stop living for their approval. I had to stop letting them dictate my worth. I wasn't a doormat. I wasn't a background character in my own life. I was Barbara and I deserved more. As I sat there thinking about everything I had lost and everything I had given, I realized one thing. I wasn't going to let this betrayal define me. I was stronger than that. I had spent too many years sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of others. Now it was time to take control back. I didn't know where this journey would lead, but I knew one thing for sure. I was not going to let my past mistakes define my future. The next time I saw Hannah, I would be ready. I wasn't going to let her make me feel small anymore. It was time for her to see the woman I had become, the woman I had always been beneath the layers of selflessness and sacrifice. I wasn't going to beg for her love or her respect. I wasn't going to fight for a place in her life if she didn't want me there. I had earned my place in this world. I had earned my happiness. And no one, not even my own daughter, was going to take that away from me. The days that followed were difficult, no doubt. Every time I passed the family photos hanging on the walls, every time I saw an old gift or a memento from the past, I felt a pang of loss. But I knew I had to keep moving forward. For me. For my own peace of mind. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I wasn't going to let the pain of the past keep me from the future I deserved. It was time to let go. It was time to live for myself. And so I began to make plans. I started doing things for myself, things I had neglected for so long. I began taking walks in the park, something I hadn't done in years. I started taking up new hobbies, things I had always wanted to try but had never found the time for. I started to remember who I was before I became a wife, before I became a mother. I started to remember who I was before I put everyone else's needs above my own. And with each passing day, I felt a little more like myself. A little more free. It wasn't easy. It wasn't instant. But it was a start. And that was all I needed. I didn't know what would happen when I saw Hannah again. But I knew one thing, I was ready. I was ready to take back my life. I was ready to stand up for myself no matter what. The power had always been mine. I had just forgotten it for a while. I had been living in a haze for the past few days, but something in me shifted. I could feel the energy in the air change as I started to act differently. I wasn't the woman I had been a week ago. That woman had been weak, controlled by her need for approval, for validation. But now I was someone else. Someone stronger, someone who had had enough. I woke up early one morning, earlier than usual, and went for a walk. It was a crisp morning, the kind where you can see your breath in the air. I used to do this with Daniel when he was younger, walking around the block talking about life, his dreams, everything. It felt good to step out of the house, to breathe in the fresh air without feeling trapped. I had forgotten what it felt like to have moments just for me. As I walked, I realized how much I had been holding on to, not saying anything. I considered walking away and letting her continue in her ignorance. But I knew I couldn't do that. I had come too far. I had fought too hard. I sat down across from her, the letter in my hands. She looked at me, waiting for me to speak, but I didn't rush it. I wanted her to feel the weight of the silence. Hannah, I began, my voice calm but firm. I want you to understand something. I've spent my life giving, loving, sacrificing, and I've never asked for anything in return. But what you did, the way you treated me, it's not something I'm going to ignore anymore. You've hurt me and you've hurt this family, but I'm not going to let you do it anymore. I'm done being the person you can walk all over. She stared at me, her face a mix of surprise and confusion. I could tell she wasn't expecting this. She wasn't expecting me to stand up for myself, to finally push back. I held her gaze, not backing down. I wasn't afraid of her, not anymore. I don't need your love or your approval, Hannah, I said, my voice steady. But I do need you to respect me. And I need you to understand that I won't be part of a family that doesn't see my worth. If you want to continue this way, fine. But I won't be here for it. The room was still, the air thick with tension. Hannah didn't say anything at first. I waited, knowing she was processing what I had just said. Finally she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what you want from me. It was clear she didn't get it. She didn't understand. But that was okay. It wasn't my job to make her understand anymore. I had done enough. I had given enough. What I want, I said slowly, is for you to realize that I'm not going to just fade into the background anymore. I'm not going to sit quietly and let you or anyone else push me aside. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her silence said everything. I stood up, feeling a sense of finality. I didn't need to say anything else. I had said what needed to be said. I had set the boundary, and now it was up to her to either respect it or lose me. The ball was in her court. As I walked away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I was ready to face it. No matter what, I had found my strength, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me. I woke up the next morning with a strange sense of peace, a feeling I hadn't experienced in years. The weight of the previous day's events still lingered, but it no longer held me down. I had taken control. I had spoken my truth, and for the first time in a long time I felt free. There was something different in the air, something that felt like the beginning of a new chapter. It wasn't going to be easy, I knew that. The road ahead would be full of challenges, but I was no longer afraid of them. The years of being controlled, of being the person everyone relied on, had prepared me for this. I had learned to endure. But now I was ready to live for myself. I had my own life to reclaim. That morning I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I spent the day with myself, with no distractions, no obligations, no responsibilities. I took a long walk through the park, something simple, something that used to bring me peace. I remembered the days when I could walk for hours, just enjoying the fresh air, the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. It was a small act, but it felt monumental. For the first time in ages, I felt like I could breathe. As the days passed, I found myself growing stronger, more confident in the decisions I had made. Hannah didn't speak to me much after our conversation, and I didn't reach out to her. The silence between us was deafening, but I had learned to accept it. She had made her choice, and so had I. I was no longer the person who would chase after her love or approval. It wasn't my job to fix things anymore. That night I sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, reflecting on everything that had led me here. The years of giving, of sacrificing, of being the mother and wife who always put others first. I had done it all because I thought it was what I was supposed to do. I had believed that love meant giving up pieces of myself, that being a good mother and wife meant losing sight of who I was. But I had been wrong. Love didn't mean self-sacrifice. It didn't mean letting others walk all over me. It meant respect. It meant caring for myself just as much as I cared for others. I had spent too long being the person everyone else wanted me to be. It was time to be who I was meant to be. The next week I made plans for myself. I signed up for a cooking class, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. I started reading books I had put off for years, immersing myself in stories and ideas that sparked something in me. I had forgotten how much I loved to read. I had forgotten how much I loved to cook. I had forgotten how much I loved to just be with myself. Felt good. It felt like reclaiming a part of myself I had buried for far too long. I even started to reconnect with old friends. Claire, who had been a constant in my life, invited me to lunch one afternoon. As we sat together, sipping coffee and chatting about everything and nothing, I realized just how much I had missed this, real, authentic connections. I had spent so many years isolated, wrapped up in my own role, that I had forgotten how important it was to nurture the relationships that truly mattered. As I walked home from lunch with Claire that day, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I had taken the first step toward rediscovering who I was, and it felt amazing. The next time I saw Hannah, I didn't know what to expect. I had heard her talking to Daniel about something, but I didn't know the details. The tension between us was still palpable, but I wasn't afraid. I had already done what needed to be done. I wasn't the same person I had been a week ago. I wasn't the same person I had been a year ago. I had changed, and that change was irreversible. As I stood in front of Hannah, I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She didn't know how to approach me, and I didn't know how to approach her. The silence stretched on, thick and uncomfortable. But this time I wasn't the one to break it. I had said what I needed to say. I had set the boundary, and now it was up to her. The ball was in her court. "You don't have to say anything," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I've made my peace with this. You need to make yours." She didn't respond immediately, and for a moment, I thought she might say something else, something that would try to push me back into my old role. But she didn't. Instead, she just nodded, her expression unreadable. I didn't know if that meant anything. I didn't know if she was sorry, if she understood what she had done, or if she even cared. But it didn't matter. I had already moved on. As I walked away, I realized something important. I didn't need her approval. I didn't need anyone's approval. I had done the work. I had found my strength. And now it was time to live for myself. The journey wasn't over, but I had taken the first steps. And those first steps were all that mattered. I woke up to the sound of the rain hitting the windows, a steady rhythm that felt oddly soothing. It was as if the world was washing away everything that had come before. I looked out the window, watching the droplets race each other down the glass, and I realized that I was no longer the same person I had been when I first walked into that house. The change wasn't just about standing up for myself. It was about realizing my worth, about no longer accepting the scraps that were given to me. I had spent too many years living in the shadows of others, trying to be what they wanted me to be. But now I was stepping into the light. I wasn't sure what the future would bring, but I knew it would be better than the past I had left behind. I spent the morning cleaning, something simple but grounding. There was something therapeutic about scrubbing the counters, washing the dishes, and getting rid of the clutter that had built up over the years. It wasn't just the house that needed to be cleaned, it was my life, my heart. I had allowed myself to be suffocated by all the emotional baggage I had been carrying for so long. But now, as I wiped down the kitchen counters, I felt lighter. It felt like I was clearing the path for something new, something better. As the days passed, I continued to focus on myself. I joined a local book club, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. I began taking yoga classes, something that helped clear my mind and center myself. I even started taking more walks, enjoying the simple pleasure of being outside, feeling the sun on my face, the wind in my hair. For the first time in years, I felt alive again. I was rediscovering who I was without the roles of mother, wife, or caretaker weighing me down. I was just Barbara, and Barbara was enough. One afternoon, a few weeks after I had made my decision to move forward, I received a call from Daniel. His voice sounded uncertain, and I could tell he wasn't sure what to say. He asked how I was doing, and I could hear the hesitation in his tone. I knew he was probably wondering if I was still upset, if things were still tense between us. I wanted to tell him that everything was fine, that I was doing okay. But instead I told him the truth. "I'm doing well, Daniel," I said, my voice calm. "I'm focusing on myself now. I'm taking care of me." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer. "I'm sorry, Mom. I should have done more. I should have been there for you." His words took me by surprise. I had expected him to defend Hannah, to make excuses for her behavior. But he didn't. He was acknowledging the hurt I had felt, and that meant more to me than anything else. "It's okay, Daniel," I said. "I've learned a lot over the past few weeks. I'm not angry anymore. I just want you to understand that I can't keep putting everyone else's needs before my own." He was quiet for a moment, and I could hear the sound of him exhaling. "I get it, Mom. I really do. I've been a terrible son. But I want to make it right." We talked for a little while longer, and by the end of the conversation I felt a sense of closure. I wasn't sure if things would ever be the same between us, but at least there was an understanding now. I had let go of the anger, and he was starting to see the truth of what had been happening. The next few days were peaceful, almost too peaceful. I continued focusing on my own growth, my own healing. I knew I had made the right decision. I wasn't looking for anyone's approval anymore. I wasn't looking for anyone to fill the void that had been left in me. I was learning to fill it myself. A week later, as I was sitting in the living room reading a book, there was a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened it, I found Hannah standing there, her expression tense. She was holding a small package in her hands, wrapped in simple brown paper. "Mom," she said quietly, her voice unsure. I need to talk to you." I looked at her for a long moment, taking in the way she stood there, waiting for me to let her in. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew this moment would come. I had thought about it a lot over the past few days. I had wondered what I would say when I saw her again, what kind of relationship we would have moving forward. But now as I stood there staring at her, I realized something. I had done the hard part. I had set the boundaries, and now it was her turn to respect them. "Come in," I said, stepping aside to let her enter. She hesitated for a moment before walking past me, sitting down on the couch across from where I had been reading. She didn't say anything at first, and the silence hung heavy between us. But I didn't feel the need to fill it with words. I had said everything I needed to say. She finally spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened," she said, her voice softer than I had ever heard it before. "And I know I hurt you. I was angry and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair, and I'm sorry." I nodded, taking in her words. Didn't expect an apology, and I didn't need one. But hearing her say it, hearing her acknowledge the pain she had caused, meant something. "I appreciate that," I said. "But I need you to understand that it's not just about the words you said. It's about the way I've been treated for so long." She nodded, her eyes downcast. I could see the guilt in her expression, but there was something else there, too. Something like understanding. "I know, Mom," she said quietly. "I've been selfish. I've been so caught up in my own life that I didn't see how much you were hurting. I've been blind to it, and I'm sorry." I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in a long time. And for the first time in a long time, I saw the daughter I used to know. I saw the girl I had raised, the one who had once been full of potential, full of life. It wasn't too late for her. It wasn't too late for us. "I'm not asking for anything, Hannah," I said softly. "I'm not asking you to fix things. I just need you to know that I can't keep going down this path. I've changed. I'm not the same person I was before." She didn't say anything for a long moment, but finally she nodded. And for the first time I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Maybe it was regret. Maybe it was hope. Whatever it was enough. I didn't know what the future would hold for us, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let the past dictate my future. And neither would she. I stood there for a moment, absorbing the weight of the words we had just exchanged. The silence between us was no longer tense. It was different now, more reflective, more open. There was still a lot unsaid, but for the first time in what felt like forever, I believed there was hope. I had come to the realization that our relationship, despite everything that had happened, could still be repaired. I wasn't sure how it would happen or how long it would take, but I knew it wasn't too late for us. I had spent years putting everyone else's needs first, believing that was what it meant to be a good mother. But now I understood that being a good mother didn't mean sacrificing my own happiness. It didn't mean tolerating disrespect or neglect. I had given enough, and now it was time to take care of myself. And it was time to let Hannah see me as more than just a mother. I wasn't just her mom, I was Barbara. And Barbara deserved respect. I started spending more time outside of the house, doing things I hadn't allowed myself to do in years. I found myself reconnecting with old friends, laughing and talking in a way I hadn't done in so long. I went out to dinner with Claire more often, and each time, I felt like I was rediscovering pieces of myself I had buried. One evening I decided to take a trip to the coast. I hadn't been to the beach in ages, and the thought of the ocean brought a sense of calm I had been craving. The trip wasn't planned, but that was what made it so special. I spent the day walking along the shoreline, letting the cool ocean breeze lift my spirits. The waves crashing against the rocks reminded me of the strength I had inside me, a strength that had been there all along. I didn't need anyone's validation anymore. I didn't need their approval. I was whole on my own. The next week, things with Hannah seemed to have settled into a quiet truce. We didn't talk much, but there was an understanding between us. She seemed to be making an effort, and I could see the subtle changes in her behavior. She wasn't perfect, and neither was I. But there was a shift, and that was enough for me. One afternoon, I decided it was time to speak to her again. I wasn't sure how it would go, but I knew I needed to say what was on my heart. I found her sitting in the living room, flipping through a magazine. It felt like the right moment, so I sat down beside her. "Hannah," I began, my voice calm, I've been thinking a lot about everything. About what we've been through. She looked up from the magazine, her eyes meeting mine. There was a slight hesitation, but she didn't look away. I know we've had our issues, I continued. I know I've been distant and I know I've held on to a lot of anger. But I want you to know that I'm letting go of that. I'm not asking for everything to go back to how it was, but I do want us to move forward. I want us to be able to build something new, even if it's not perfect. Hannah didn't speak right away. I could see the wheels turning in her head. I wasn't sure if she was ready to make that commitment, but I knew I had to give her space to process it. Finally she spoke, her voice softer than I had heard it in a long time. I don't want things to be the way they were either, she said. I've been thinking a lot too. I know I've hurt you and I'm sorry for that. I wasn't thinking about how my actions affected you. I was too caught up in my own life. But I don't want to lose you. I want to try, Mom. I really do. I smiled, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't everything I had hoped for, but it was a start. I realized that I didn't need perfection. I didn't need everything to be fixed overnight. What mattered was that we were both willing to try. And that was enough. We didn't have to have all the answers, but we had each other. And that was something. Over the next few months we took small steps forward. There were still moments of tension, still times when things felt awkward, but we kept going. We kept talking, slowly rebuilding the foundation of our relationship. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, moments when I wanted to give up, but I didn't. I had made the decision to live for myself, and part of that meant learning to be patient with others, even when it was difficult. I didn't know where this journey would lead, but I was okay with that. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the right path. And that was enough for me. One evening as I sat in the living room, flipping through an old photo album, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had spent so many years trying to please others, trying to make everyone happy, but now I was finally happy with myself. I had learned that it wasn't about what anyone else thought of me. It was about what I thought of myself. And for the first time I was proud of the person I had become. I didn't know if things would ever go back to the way they were with Hannah, but I wasn't afraid of the future anymore. I had found my strength and I had learned to live for me. That was all I needed. I woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside my window, the sunlight creeping through the curtains. It was a quiet morning, but there was something different about it. I felt a sense of calm I hadn't experienced in years. For the first time in a long time, I woke up feeling at peace with myself. The past few months had been a journey, one that had taken me through heartbreak, self-reflection, and ultimately, a sense of renewal. But there was still so much ahead of me. I had changed. I had learned to stop looking to others for validation and started to trust in my own strength. I knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be bumps along the way, moments of doubt, moments of frustration. But I also knew I was stronger now. I had the power to move forward, to build the life I deserved. I spent the day doing what made me happy. I took a walk through the park, breathing in the fresh air, feeling the sun on my face. I had always loved being outside, but I had forgotten how much joy it brought me. As I walked, I thought about the choices I had made, about how far I had come. The old me would have stayed in the shadows, afraid to assert myself, afraid of what others might think. But that wasn't me anymore. I had spent so many years giving everything to my family, trying to make everyone else happy. But now I understood that my happiness mattered too. I wasn't going to live my life for anyone else anymore. It was time to live for me. Later that afternoon I called Daniel. It had been a while since we'd spoken, and I wasn't sure how he'd react, but I knew it was time. When he answered the phone, his voice was warm, but there was an underlying tension, as if he didn't know what to expect. "Hey, Mom," he said. "How's everything?" I smiled softly, sitting down on the bench in the park. "Everything's good," I said. "I've been taking care of myself, just focusing on what makes me happy." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear the sound of him shifting, almost as if he was processing what I had said. "That's really good to hear, Mom," he said after a moment. "I'm glad you're doing okay." I could tell he was relieved, but there was still an underlying sadness in his voice, as if he knew there was more we needed to talk about. "I've been thinking a lot, Daniel," I continued, my voice steady. "About everything. About how we've let things get to this point. I want you to know that I'm not angry anymore. I'm just trying to move forward." He sighed softly, and I could hear the regret in his breath. "I know, Mom. I know I've let you down. I've been so caught up in my own life, I didn't see what was happening. But I'm sorry. I want to do better. I want to be there for you like I should have been." His words hit me harder than I expected. I had spent so much time holding on to the hurt, and hearing him acknowledge it was like a weight lifting off my chest. "It's not just about the past, Daniel," I said, my voice quieter now. "It's about moving forward. I'm not asking for things to be perfect, but I need you to understand that I'm not the same person I was before. I'm taking care of myself now." There was a long pause, and for a moment I thought he might say something else. But instead he simply said, "I get it, Mom. I really do." The conversation ended on a peaceful note, and I felt a sense of closure, something I hadn't expected. I didn't know if everything would go back to normal, but I knew we had both taken steps toward healing. And that was enough for me. The days that followed were peaceful, and I spent my time continuing to focus on my own growth. I started going to more yoga classes, found new hobbies, and even started volunteering at a local shelter. I had been so focused on my family for so long that I had forgotten how much joy helping others could bring. It wasn't about fixing everything. It was about finding fulfillment in my own life. I didn't need to rely on anyone else to feel complete. I was enough on my own. A few weeks later, Hannah reached out to me. She had called me several times before, but I hadn't been ready to talk. I wasn't sure if she was ready either, but I knew it was time to have that conversation. When I picked up the phone, her voice was softer than I had heard it in a long time. "Mom, can we talk?" she asked. I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of emotions. "Of course," I said, my voice steady. "I think we need to." We talked for hours that afternoon, and while it wasn't easy, it was necessary. She apologized for the hurt she had caused, and I apologized for the times I had shut her out. We didn't have all the answers, but we were both willing to try. I had been afraid of this moment for so long, but now that it had come, I realized something important. I didn't need to fix everything. I didn't need to make everything right. I just needed to allow myself to heal. And that's what I did. It wasn't about being perfect or having everything fall into place. It was about being true to myself and understanding that I had the strength to move forward, no matter what. I had learned that I was capable of more than I ever thought. I had learned that I was worth the effort. The road ahead wasn't always going to be easy, but I was no longer afraid. I had found my voice, and I wasn't going to lose it again. The future was mine to shape, and I was ready to embrace it, with or without anyone's approval. I had become the person I was always meant to be, and that was enough.